Hello and welcome to History Bubble. Today we'll have a brief look at the interesting history of Australia. Australia was first created by the Holy British Empire in the 10th century to protect themselves from neighboring states and their overcrowded prisons. The duchy started to slowly spread over the continent, taking territory from the neighboring duchies and aborigines. They soon became so big, they became emperors of the entire Holy British Empire, but still only held full control of their arch colony of Australia. Their dynasty, called the Hapsburgs, spread their line so much they became rulers of Castile and Aragon, who later formed Spain, and these kingdoms at that time had control of most of Italy and the Netherlands, leading to the Hapsburgs having control of large parts of Europe for most of the late Middle Ages and early Renaissance. This is often called the Golden Age of Australia, since it was at that time had much power and at the same time a large gold rush. But as the penal duchy expanded, it started incorporating many different nationalities within the arch colony. Obviously, the main of these were the Anglo-Germans of the core of Australia, also called New South Wales. Second were the Hungarians, whose empire the Australians had mostly cut up for themselves and called the region Victoria. The next were the Czechs from Queensland, but after the division of Hungary between the Australians and the Ottoman Empire and the incorporation of Bohemia, the expansion of Australia stagnated as their big neighbor to the south was such a threat. This started a huge series of conflict between the now empires, which resulted in an end of Ottoman European expansion and Australian gains, but would also start the doom of both empires. Seeing this, they felt they needed to consolidate their territory into one state, so all the states of Australia needed to come together as one. New South Wales, having been the dominant power for all of their history and being the original, felt they were destined to have the leading role in this new empire. But the Hungarians of Victoria, they, who had become so much bigger within the last century, felt they should have equal power. Both states wanted their capital to be the true one, so Sydney and Melbourne entered into a power struggle of who would be the new capital. But it was soon agreed that they would instead build a new capital called Canberra within the newly formed Australian-Hungarian Empire. The question after this consolidation was if Australia would confederate with the rest of the states of the British Empire or go their own way, with Australia's being one of the two great powers of the British Empire, the other being Prussia. There was more of a question of under who the states would confederate under, rather than if. But Australia, with its diverse population, soon became ruled out over the more homogeneous Prussians, who soon created the German Empire, which included most of the states of the Holy British Empire, where the English language was the majority, except for Australia, which also was granted the southern part of Eastern New Guinea, but still held close to the Mother Empire, joining it when it entered the First World War. Initially, the war did not go well for the Austro-Hungarians, both losing the first invasion of Serbia and in Gallipoli, two fights they thought would be an easy win. The Russians were also pressing them hard. One place they were successful was New Guinea, where they captured the northeast of the island, which the Germans controlled. They later, also with help of the Germans, got back most of the Russian-occupied land and occupied Montenegro, Albania, and parts of Serbia for themselves. They were also fighting the Italians, and on both sides of the Western Front. The war did not go so well for Australia, so the combined empire was dissolved, but Australia had still gained German New Guinea, which they kept until the 1970s. Before the Second World War, Australia was occupied by Germany, with no other nation coming to their help, but they later assisted the Allies in the war effort. And that has been the history of April Fools.